Howdy! You're listening to the Breakaway Podcast, a Bible study recorded on the campus of Texas A&M. Thanks for listening and enjoy the talk.
Well, when I was in high school, we spent one Christmas at my grandma's house. And so I went to bed Christmas Eve like anybody does, with the excitement of Christmas morning percolating in my heart, right? And so I was shocked to discover that following morning that I was awoken not by the promise of presents down the hall, but by a work boot in my ribs, pushing me up and down on the bed in rhythm with a voice that was going, "Hey, hey, hey, get up." And I looked up, and it was my grandmother's friend, James. And I watched him go do the same thing to my brother, who was in the bed next to me. And then before he walked out of the room, he just looked at us and went, "Get in the truck." So we got up and got dressed, and we got in his truck, and we just began to drive. And James was, like 100. And so the whole time we were driving, he was just making this horrible rasping sound. He was just like, and then the car would just kind of swerve onto the shoulder. And so we were across the front cab of the truck. And so the whole time we're driving, I'm just kind of helping us get back on the road. Like, "Okay, buddy, all right." And just as we went on and on down highways and then back roads and then no roads and then literally driving through a field. And then at one point we are out in the middle of a field in the smack dab middle of nowhere. He stops the truck. And then he looks at me and says, "Get out of the truck." So I get out of the truck, and it's Christmas. It's freezing out there. And I remember I look up at the truck like, "What am I doing?" And he goes, "Get the axe out of the back." And so I go and get the axe. And meanwhile, while I'm doing that, suddenly all this cattle starts running towards the truck and lining up shoulder to shoulder facing us. And I'm like, "Where am I? Like, what is this?" And so I grab the axe, and I'm walking back to the front of the truck to get back in the cab, but I don't get a chance. He hits the gas, and the last thing I hear as he drives off is, "Cut firewood," and then he just peels away, right? And the last thing I see is my brother's face looking at me through the back window like, "Where is he taking me?" And I'm like, "What am I doing here?" Right? And they disappear in the distance. And I look over, and between me and this random line of cows is a tree that had been felled by lightning, and which I guess was my work for the day. And so I was theological enough at that moment that just before I just jumped into chopping some wood, I just stopped for a second and said, "God, what are you doing? Like, what is happening here? Like, what is this? Like, this is Christmas morning. It's supposed to be joyful and comfortable and warm. Instead, this is like cold and horrible. Like, why am I out here? It's Christmas. I should be with family and friends around a fireplace, not with random cows around a tree. Like, what am I doing out here?" You ever had an experience like that? Not like Christmas with an axe and random cows. But I mean an experience in life where you look around at the scenery and you go, "God, what am I doing here? Like, why did you lead me to this place? Like, what is that? This is not what my expectations were hoping would come to pass. Like, what am I doing in this place in my life? Why are you leading me here?" I remember for me, freshman year at A&M, around this time, about a month into it, I just looked up at one point and I was like, "Why am I at this school? I picked it at random, and like, I'm a business major, I think. Like, I don't even know I'm in this major. I don't really have friends here. I don't know any people. My girlfriend just broke up, and I broke up. I am like hurt and alone and just living off campus." And I remember walking out into a field at one moment and just going, "God, what are you doing? Where is my life going? Why are you leading it this way?" You ever had that moment where you just go, "God, I don't understand this"? Or for me, I added that Christian piece of, "God, I've been a good person. Why are you doing this?" You ever asked that question? Like, "God, I know you love me and you're king and reign forever, but why does it feel like you're sabotaging my life?" You ever asked that? Why do you seem to be making it needlessly complicated? Why am I being a good person and everybody else gets to date someone but me? Why am I doing everything right and you won't let me meet the one? Or why am I I'm a good guy, but you won't let me be a leader. Like, you've shown me these gifts, but I'm not getting to use them. Why are you doing this? Have you ever asked that question? God, I've been praying to you, and it just seems like all those prayers go nowhere. What are you doing? Why are you leading my life this way? Why does it feel like you're putting obstacles in front of me? Why are you making this so complicated? Why are you directing my life this way? You ever asked him that question? Well, I bring that up because that's where we are in the book of Exodus, and you go, no, it's not, Ben. If you've been following along, you're like, this is the happy moment where they're about to be set free from Egypt, right? This is the 10 plagues happened. Now this is the set free and sing moment. No. When you jump into chapter 12, the 10 plagues did happen, and Pharaoh looks at the people of God, the Israelites, and says, get out of here. You people take off. And so they're set free, but then something interesting happens. God is letting them loose from Egypt, and he's taking them to a piece of real estate he's been passionate about and been really pumping up to them. I'm going to take you to the promised land because I promised it to your forefathers. It's going to be amazing. And he said, this is going to be incredible. I can show you on a map just to give you a sense of where he's taking them. There's Egypt. You see all the green, the life around the Nile. He's taking them to the promised land, really the only other place with green anywhere in that area, right? And he says, I'm going to take you there. It's going to be amazing. Now, I'm no mapologist, but if you look at this, you go, okay, it would seem that we would just want to walk along the coastline. Like, that's the quickest way there. That would make sense. That would get us there in a hurry. We enjoy maximal green, minimal desert. Let's go north. And God's like, right, I'm going to lead you to this place that's great, so let's go south, everybody. And he takes them the opposite direction. You see it in chapter 13. It says, when Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, even though it was near. But God led the people around by the way of the wilderness. He says, let's go, and takes them to the middle of nowhere. And not only that, in chapter 14, it says, then the Lord said to Moses, tell the people of Israel to turn back and encamp in front of Pi-hahiroth between Migdol and the sea. For Pharaoh will say of the people of Israel, they're wandering in the land, and the wilderness has shut them in. He says, here's the deal. I want you to go south, and not just go south, then I want you to go south, and then I want you to backtrack a little bit and kind of wander a bit and just kind of take everyone around. So Pharaoh looks and goes, I think they're lost. I don't know what they're doing. He says, that's the plan. And I imagine they're sitting there and going, really? That's the plan? Mill around and look lost? How about we are lost? How about your hands are off the wheel? How about this strategy makes no sense? What are you doing, God? Why do you do stuff that seems to complicate our lives for no reason? Why do you take us south to go north? Well, we're looking at this for this reason. If we can understand God's motivations with these people, we'll get a window into his motivations for why he's messing up your life, right? And here's the interesting thing. We get 3 very clear reasons why he does this to them in this text. Did you know that? And so I'm going to show them to you because they're reasons that still motivate why he does some of the things he does for us. And the first one you see is in chapter 13, verse 17. It says, when Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, even though it was near. He didn't take them the shortest route. Why? It tells us, for God said, lest the people change their minds when they see war and return to Egypt. God says, I'm not taking them that way because the Philistines live there and the Philistines are warriors. Israelites have been slaves for generations. And yeah, you may have some talent, but it would be like a football team that has never played together and has no coach and goes out against a great team. You've had no training, no practice, no coaching. You'll have no unit cohesion. So you're going to go out there, and even if you have some scattered talent, you're going to get crushed. You'll be like Antonio Banderas at the beginning of Zorro. Do you remember what he told him? You would have fought bravely and died quickly, right? God takes an honest assessment of the situation and says, you are not organized enough to pull that off. There's Philistines there, and you're not ready for them. Why does God not fast track them to the place they want to be in life? Answer, they're not ready. They're not ready. The shortest route had challenges, frankly, they weren't prepared to handle. So God, in his mercy, took them south instead of north. And it's the same with you. Why won't God give you that girlfriend you want? Why does he keep keeping leadership positions away? Why does he wait so long to answer that prayer you've been throwing up every day? Why does he do that? One possible reason is that honestly, you're not ready. You're not ready. So God will purposefully lead you away from these challenges, and he'll lead you out into the wilderness. Why? Because it's in the heat of the desert that God forges character. Why will God lead you away from some of the things you want so badly? Here's the reason why. Number one is to forge your character, to form your character, to make you into the kind of people that you need to be to handle the blessings he wants to give to you. Because it's in the heat of the desert that God forges character. It's in the loneliness of the wilderness that he cultivates intimacy. And so I talk to people all the time. They go, man, I just don't know where my life's going. I don't know why God's doing this. It just seems like he's leading me out into the middle of nowhere. I don't understand what he's doing. I just feel like maybe he's not even there. No. If you know God and you're wondering, where am I in life? Let me tell you something. He pulls that kind of stuff all the time. Read your Bible. David is a teenager. And God tells him, you're going to be king. Darn right I am, all right? And he's all pumped up about it. What happens? He goes out and kills Goliath, becomes famous. He becomes a head in the military. He marries into royalty. He's a step away from the kingdom. I'm about to take over this joint, y'all. And then what does God do? God sends him out into the desert for a decade. What? Why, God? You're killing the momentum. Why stick a David in the desert? Because David had to get out there, and before he could lead millions, he had to lead 10 or lead 20. And he had to figure out when conflicts rise up, how do you deal with them? How do you push through and do the right thing even when it's hard? And then watch God show up and bless that. He had to learn that in the wilderness. And guess what? While he was doing that, he forged a community that was going to become his cabinet when he was king. But he met them not in spite of the fact that he was in the desert, but because he was in the desert. So God ordained the desert to be the place of preparation for David to be king. He did it to Moses. Moses was there in Egypt. He was already there. Hey, let the people go. We could do it right now. And he tried it as a 40-year-old, and made a mess of things. And God said, let me take you out into the wilderness for a couple decades. And let me just get you real good at leading sheep around in the desert. Why? Because you're about to lead people through this desert. And I'm going to make you an incredible shepherd before you get here. It's the wilderness where I'll forge your character. Right? He did it with Joseph. Joseph got dreams when he was a kid. You're going to be a ruler in Egypt. Right? And then what did God do? Made him a slave. And then made him a prisoner in a prison cell. That doesn't look like a killer resume for a job in government, right? And yet he learned how to serve when there was no applause. And he made the connections that would be critical to get him in that place. God used the wilderness, and God will do that with you, okay? That's one of the reasons why he does that. He charts our course in a way that will carve into us character, right? The word character comes from the word karasso. It means to etch. It's what you do to a statue. I come to a block of stone, and what do? I take a chisel and a hammer, and I go to work on it, right? Because if you just put a block of stone into a museum, you're not going to pay $20 to see it, right? I've got to take it out into the workshop and hammer that thing, right? And then sand it and polish it and make David. Right? Because you'll pay money to go see that. But not until it's been sanded away and chiseled. Do you see that? God will take you into the wilderness to shape character into you. Because you got talent. But talent without character is a tragedy waiting to happen. And so often God in his mercy will keep you away from some of the things you want until he can forge into you character. When I was a freshman in college, I remember I got here and I had been a leader of some ministries in high school. So when I showed up in college, I just assumed they would put me in charge. I mean, I showed up in college and was like, throw me the ball. I'm ready to play, right? And every ministry I got into was like, okay, yeah, there's some seats back there, you know. They're like, we can put you in a Bible study like beginners, like there's someone called God. And I'm like, really? Really? And I was so arrogant about it in my heart. And the reality is God kept me out of leadership that freshman year. And I wondered, why aren't you letting me do this? And there in the midst of that wilderness, I had no jobs to do. I just had to sit with God. And in that moment, God showed me there was a lot of hurt and anger and unresolved issues in my heart that I had always tried to outrun by putting my life in fifth gear. And God made me stop and sit out in a park and get right with him. And he put love in my heart where it wasn't before. And then by my junior year, yeah, I was leading stuff, but I was leading as a person who loved the people he was leading. I needed God to shape me. Donna and I laugh about this all the time. If the college Ben would have met the college Donna, that would have gone so bad. We would not have liked each other at all. And that's not like a cute little marriage story. Oh, but then God, no, we would have hated each other. And I know so many of you are like, well, Ben, the one has to be an Aggie. Like, I've got X many months to meet him. I didn't get married till later. Some of you might meet him in college, some of you won't. I don't know God's plan for you, but I know this. Often God will keep away from you something you want because you're not ready. And so why is he leading you to the wilderness? To forge in you character. Let him do it. There's a second reason. You see it in chapter 14, verse 1. It says, then the Lord said to Moses, tell the people of Israel to turn back and encamp in front of Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, in front of Baal-Zephon. You shall camp facing the sea. So he tells them, I want you to go and then backtrack, for Pharaoh will say of the people of Israel, they're wandering in the land. The wilderness has shut them in. He says, I want you to go march out, and then when you get someplace, go, okay, 2 million plus people. Everybody back up. Let's go back where we started. Okay, let's camp there. All right, let's wander over here for a minute. Why are we doing this? So that Pharaoh will think that you don't know what you're doing. And then God says, and then I will harden Pharaoh's heart and he'll pursue you. Like, how crazy does that sound? What kind of coach would do that? Okay, team, here's the play. I want you to run the opposite direction. Run around in circles and bunch. Okay? And then what I'm going to do is send the enemy, and I want to put you right in a situation where you got the Red Sea in front of you, a screaming horde of trained warriors on the other side, okay? And so where I want you is positioned right between drowning and a certain massacre, okay? Let's get a break on 3. Get started, team. Team on 3. Yeah, that's the dumbest plan I've ever heard in my life. That's really the plan? That's the plan. That is the plan. I want you to go to the wilderness. I want you to wander around. I want you to get lost. I'm going to tick Pharaoh off. He's going to come attack you. And you're going to have a sea on one side and a massive army on the other side. And you're going to be in a place that looks absolutely hopeless. Why would God do that? Why would he do that? He tells you, and I will get glory over Pharaoh and all his hosts, and the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord. Why does he lead you in directions you don't understand? Often, it's to display his glory. He's like a good performer, right? I mean, if some guy came to us and was like, hey, everybody, I'm going to walk on a tightrope, we would go, okay, good luck, buddy. People do that in the park. I don't care. But if he says, I'm going to do it over the Grand Canyon, you're going to go, wow, that's pretty crazy, man. Well, be safe out there. Hey, I'm going to do it without a harness or a net. That's insane. Hey, I'm going to do it backwards. Wow, can you even do that? I'm going to do it backwards and blindfolded. Man, that is nuts. I'm going to do it backwards, blindfolded, while on fire after receiving a gunshot wound. And you go, it can't be done. That's insane. What's happening? The greater the challenge, the greater the glory. If he just said, I'm going to walk on a tightrope, you're going to say, don't care. But if he says, I'm going to do all this, you go, I got to tune in. I got to watch this guy. This guy's going to kill himself. Hey, everybody tune in. Hey, it's going to happen at 3. Let's watch him. Oh my God, he's going to die. Right? And we just watch what happens. Why? Because if he makes it, then we all go, that is insane. And we talk about it everywhere we go. That was crazy. Did you see that guy? Why? Because the greater the challenge, the greater the glory. And God says, I want to put you in a situation that looks flat impossible. Because when I show up, it will blow their minds. God will often put us in a situation where the only source of rescue will be God. And when he does it, it will blow people's minds. They will glory in a God who is mighty to save. And if you're one of his kids, he'll do that stuff to you. So I've told this story several times in here, my story of showing up here at Breakaway. Big step of faith for me to get here. And when I got here, the first day was the lowest point financially in Breakaway's history. We had more bills than we had money. And I'm looking around going, I don't know what I'm going to do. I've never had a staff like this before, and I'm going to have a staff and be like, hey guys, we're going to drown. We're all going to die. Like there's no way out, right? And I'm panicking. And I remember I'm looking at this going, I don't know anyone with money. I don't have any money. I don't know how we're going to do this. And then we talked to the university, and the university was in a place where like, hey, man, we're going to triple your rent at Reed. And I remember I was like, that's the end of Breakaway. Good night, everybody. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. I was like, this is it. Like I moved to College Station for like 3 weeks, right? Like I took a job as captain of the Titanic. Like that's what I decided to do. Welcome, everyone. Let's go. All right. I was like, that was brilliant. And I remember sitting down with my young team leaders, a group of college students like you guys, and we pulled them into a house, and I was like, hey guys, here's the situation. No money, bills, high cost, no plan, no connections. Let's get on our faces. And we just laid down and prayed, oh God, if you want this thing to exist, it does. If you don't, it doesn't. But our eyes are on you. And that month, we got the largest influx of donations Breakaway had ever received. And it's history. And now we're here. And I look at that and I go, why did he do that? He did that because I watched a group of students marvel that when all looked hopeless and they saw God come through, he was glorified in their presence, right? God loves to give himself glory. And he'll put you in hard situations so that when you cry out for him to rescue, and he does, you become a worshiper and marvel at a God who will split the Red Sea for you, right? Now, some of you go, well, Ben, I just have never understood that whole glory thing. Like, why do you keep talking about God cares so much about his glory? Why is he going to mess with my life so that people will see God in my life? Why would he do that kind of stuff? Let me just say it briefly this way. If I was to ask you, what is the most valuable thing in existence? The answer would be God. And so if the next question is, well, then what would be the greatest gift he could give you? If God was giving out gifts, what would be the greatest gift he could give you? Answer would be himself. Himself. A relationship with him. And so one of the ways God gives that to people is he shows them Exhibit A. Let me show you what I'll do in this person's life so that when you see it, you go, wow, I want to know him like that. Right? God will do that all the time. So if I'm looking at my life and going, I could bless other human beings. What's the greatest thing I could do for another human being? I could introduce them or be an example to them or an inspiration to them or a voice to them to help connect them with God, the greatest being of all beings. I could be a part of that. Then if you asked me, Ben, would you be willing to lose your job for the glory of God in someone's life? That they would see you trust God financially and see him provide. Would it be worth losing your job? Yes. Ben, would it be worth going through illness? That you'd get sick and trust God in a hospital bed so that people would watch you not be shaken by it, but watch you trust God and see peace in the midst of the storm. Would you be willing to do that for the glory of God in their lives? Yes. What if God took your life so that through your death, people could marvel at someone who would die by faith and they would glorify God? Would you do it? I hope, Christian, your answer would be yes. And God cares about that. Jesus said yes to that. That I will give my life so that God would be glorified in you. So will God direct your life to maximally give him glory? Yes, he will. He'll do it all the time. John Calvin, one of the worst days of his life was when he got fired, and not just fired in Geneva, but kicked out of town. They fired him and said, leave the city. That's a bummer, all right? And he went to Strasbourg, and you go, that was one of the worst moments of your life. But it was in Strasbourg that he wrote prolifically commentaries on massive sections of the New Testament that we still read today. It's where he wrote the second edition, the expanded one of his institutes, one of the first articulation of Protestant theology, of trying to put the Bible together in a way that helps people understand it in a cohesive way. He began to preach and got put right in the center of the Protestant Reformation movement and got to focus it on the glory of God. Met his wife there. And so when you look back at his life, you go, what was the toughest moment of his life? Getting fired from Geneva and having to move to Strasbourg. But if you go, what was the greatest thing that happened in his life for him and for the world? Him moving to Strasbourg. And God will do that. Elizabeth Elliot and her husband Jim wanted to share the gospel with the Auca Indians. They showed up there and they killed her husband Jim and his friends immediately. Elizabeth went back and continued to minister to them. And as she told them the gospel of a Jesus Christ, the Son of God, who would give their life for them, that they could know God, they had a living picture of it when they understood that that's what these men did. That's why these men didn't fire their gun at them when they threw the spears. They let them kill them. They saw a picture of the gospel. And this whole tribe came to put their faith in Jesus. Generations changed forever because this man was willing to give his life for the glory of God and a whole people group. Will God complicate your life for his glory? Yes. And praise God if he does, because that's the best gift you could give somebody. What's the last reason he would mess with your life? Well, number 3 is, we don't have time to read all these passages, but I'll just say it this way. The people show up at the edge of the Red Sea. Pharaoh's chariots come rolling in, and the Israelites, we have no hope. They had gotten beaten by the slave owners in Egypt. Now you got the elite guard with the most technologically advanced equipment bearing down on them. So they do what you think they would do. Absolutely freak out, panic. They go, Moses, weren't there enough graves in Egypt? You couldn't just let us die there? Remember how awesome Egypt was? And they just totally lose perspective, right? Forget the 10 plagues, forget how God's cared for them, forget the Passover, forget all that. They're like, we're all going to die, right? Total panic. And I would mock them, but I do that kind of stuff all the time. And so do you guys, I would guess. I remember as a Christian coming into college, God had so marvelously provided for me. But my freshman year, I was like, I'm the only Christian at A&M, God, why? Really? Amazing provision of friendship and growth and development through college. But when I left college and got my first job, I was like, Lord, you've abandoned me in the suburbs. Why, God? Right? This week, I sat down to write a sermon, and I was like, God, I'm just so exhausted, and I don't think you're going to come through and give me a sermon. And then I just thought, Ben, how many sermons has he come through before? Do you realize how stupid that prayer is? But we do it all the time. There's the ocean. Here come the troops. Freak out. God's not real, or God doesn't care, or God hates me, or whatever. Right? That's what we do. Right? And what does God do? Moses looks at him and says, fear not. Stand firm. See the salvation of God. Holds that staff out. Holds it out all night long. God will make us struggle sometimes much longer than we want to. We want the movie version where it happens like that. Boom! See, I told y'all. It doesn't happen that way. But all night long, the wind starts to blow. And when the sun rises, they look, and there's a path through the sea. And they walk through it. The horsemen come charging after them. They make it through the sea. The sea collapses on their enemies, saves the lives and the lives of their children. And it says, when they saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore, Israel saw the power of the Lord used against the Egyptians, and the people feared the Lord, and they believed in the Lord and his servant Moses. Why will God complicate your life sometimes? Because faith is like a muscle. And when you work out a muscle, what happens? You have to put it in crisis. And when you put it in crisis, what happens? You can't do it. But as you continually put it in crisis, what happens? It grows and it gets stronger. God will put your faith in him in crisis all the time. God, I can't pay the bills. When he does, you go, whew, okay, no, we're good. God, I'm never going to be married. I'm going to die alone. Oh, you're good. That actually worked out great. Thanks. That's awesome. And he's going to keep putting you at the edge of your faith till you full on freak out, panic. And then he comes through. And when he does, what happens? I fear the Lord. And what happens to them? They sing. They sing. Right? For us, our little sparrow, our little daughter, when she was born, had all manner of different complications. And we just didn't know at several points if she was going to make it into the world and how that would go. And for Donna and I, that's a pretty wild thing when you get all that surge of excitement over a new life coming in, and then you go, maybe, or maybe not. And it drove us to our knees, and we were like, God, we don't know what you're going to do, and we trust you, and our eyes are on you, and help us. And not all babies get to come into the world, but God provided for us and cared for us. And as we did it, we just trust him now. We just say, we trust you. We trust you. And he's birthed in our heart a gratitude that I don't know that I would have had without that little bit of crisis. For me, when Hannah was born, it's when I first injured my back and a doctor looked at my face and said, you won't be able to hold your babies maybe forever. And then when God worked through people and through a miracle and gave me my health back, now when I walk through life, I found I don't get shaken as much because I go, okay, God, I trust you. I trust you with my body. I trust you with my girls. I trust you with my life. Why? Because he leads me into crisis where I have nothing but him. And when he comes through, my faith grows. And God will do that to you, right? Why does God lead us into difficult places? Why does he take us south to go north? It's to shape into you character, to display his glory, and to deepen your faith. That's why he does it. That's why he does it. And he will do it all the time. And so when he provides, they sing a song. And in the song, they celebrate a God who saves. And here's the cool thing about it, and this is where we'll close. As they sing the song of Moses, they sing about a God who saved them from the Red Sea. And then the weirdest thing happens. At the end of the song, they don't just sing about the sea moment. They link up their story to the big story. They say, God, you saved us from the Red Sea and from these enemies that wanted to kill us. And God, you will lead us forward. We trust you. And God, you will establish your kingdom. And you will put over it your king who will rule forever. And they start to say, God has this big story of building a new kingdom, and our lives are a part of that. It's interesting when Paul wrote to the Corinthians in 1 Corinthians, he said, do you know what was happening here? He said, what was happening with them was a true story had happened. He says, but it was a picture of what happens with us in Jesus. That we see the crisis, that we are in trouble in sin, dominated by it, and are hopeless. And he says that water of the Red Sea is like baptism into Jesus. We say God has to move, and God takes certain death and parts it, that we can be led out and given life and brought into the land of promise where God's designed us to be. And why do we do that? When we see crisis, we cry out, God save. And when he does, man, we glorify him. And so there's some of you in here that you'd say, Ben, I'm not a Christian. The message of Christianity is I'm dead in my sin and lost. But God has sent a rescuer to part the waters of my sin and set me free into an intimacy with God, that they'll fall in love with him and worship him in the wilderness. Right? And for those of us who know him, believers, can I say this to you? What do you do when things aren't working your way? For most Christians, do you know what we do? We doubt the goodness of God or his love for us. And let me just challenge you, don't do that. God looked at the believer and said, fear not, stand firm, watch my salvation. For me, over my freshman year, I had to do that. Okay, God, I'm going to keep pressing into you. And as I did, man, I saw him provide for me, and my faith deepened. And now I look at my life, and I'm so grateful for how God's using my life and how he's blessed my life, and I trust him. I trust him. And when hard times come, I try to remember his blessings so that I don't panic when the next crisis comes. Easy for me to preach that. We'll see what happens at the next crisis. But I'll tell you this. Back in that field on Christmas Day, as I sat there with my 30 new cattle friends, I asked him that question, God, what am I doing out here in the middle of nowhere? And I remember sitting down and two things happened. One, I felt like the Lord was whispering to me, Ben, there's so much in your life that you've just not dealt with. We're so easily distracted. And God said, I just had to sit you down for a minute to let you process what's going on with your family and in your own heart. And I had a communion with God out there over some deep hurt that I hadn't done and wouldn't have if he didn't get me out into the wilderness. And he put me out in the middle of beauty of nature so that I could sit and talk to a God who rules over the sky and the land and animals and life. And I just got to sit there and whisper to him, I trust you. With my life, with where it's going, I trust you. And my faith deepened in him. And he's been faithful. He's been faithful. And he will be to you.
Welcome to the Breakaway Podcast. My name is Brent, and I'm here with Ben Stewart. And we just had another great night. Week 5 of Breakaway.
Yeah, here we go.
And we were back in Reed. It really felt like coming home after a long trip.
Man, the first month was just one intense hallmark after another. I mean, the largest breakaways we've ever had by far. The first breakaway, Simpson, Kyle. And then now coming into Reed, that first month was an awesome launch phase, but this one felt different. It felt like, okay, we're into the fall now. Mm-hmm. We're rocking along, and it felt great.
Yeah, it really did. Worship led by Robbie C. So great to see him and his band.
Oh man, they're so good, and did an awesome job.
Yeah,
cello, you can't go wrong with a cello.
Bringing Amy to our wedding.
Come on.
She's going to play cello at our wedding.
Yeah, she is. If you don't listen to Robbie C., you're out of your mind. You should listen to him. He's amazing. You can go to robbiecband.com and check them out. We didn't have their CDs at Breakaway last night because they're giving them away for free now on NoiseTrade. So you can go to noisetrade.com or just go to their website. And his latest album, Rich and Poor, is on there for free. And he's working on a new album on Psalms, just putting Psalms to music, which I can't wait for. And so we love Robbie, love having him around, and we'll see him again in the weeks as the weeks go by. Yeah. So we love it, man. Did a great job.
Yes, he did. And you continued in Exodus, kind of part 5, talking about God leading our life, God being in control and trusting him even when it seems like you don't understand what he's doing or the direction he's taking you. Mm-hmm. And so if they just listen to the podcast, they got a sense of that. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, man. I mean, this is one of those talks you could give from so many different passages in the Bible. So many talk about this. The unknown is where God grows your faith. And I talked to so many students after Breakaway that were like, this was just what I needed to hear. And I'm like, well, sure, you're in college and there's so many unknowns, big unknowns in your life. What am I majoring in? Who am I going to marry? Where am I going to move to and work? I mean, these massive unknowns are right in front of you. And what I love about this time is God will do to you what he does all through his Bible. It's replete with examples of him just holding back information from people because we want an anchor. We want something to grip onto. God, just show me the one. God, just show me the job. God, just show me the city. And he'll say, not yet. And what I want you to do is have nothing to grip onto except me. And your faith deepens that way. And you find out he really is trustworthy and he really is good and he really is all those things he says he is in the Psalms. And what happens is, as he leaves you in that place with no resting place but him, you find that he really is the surest resting place. And his word can come alive to you. And so trials like that, can cause panic, can cause you to lose faith, or they can deepen your faith. And so this is an awesome opportunity in life for many of you. And not just young people, any age, God puts us through these moments of mystery of what you're doing. But these are great days to say, okay, God, I'm going to press into your word and I believe I'll see the goodness of God in the land of the living. I don't know what that will look like. I don't entirely know what that means, but I trust you with my life. And it's amazing when he shows up. I don't think any Israelite was going, okay, God, just part the sea, God, just part the sea, just part the sea, God. They didn't even know that option was on the table. They were just praying, just let us go north or something. And God was like, no, I'm going to do it a different way, but I promise when you see it later, you won't just go, yeah, that worked out. You'll sing. You'll sing. And I know I found that to be true as I've trusted God. And I told one young man at the end of last night, I said, if I could go back and talk to the 20-year-old me, I would tell him, freak out less, trust God more because he's faithful, and then step out and where he hasn't shown you his unrevealed will, who you're going to marry, where you're going to work, just excel at the revealed will. So I spent a lot of time freaking out. I tell myself, don't freak out. I don't know if that would have helped me or not, but I would say it to me anyway. Don't freak out. Trust God and excel at the revealed things. He's revealed to you to draw near and know him, so know him. He's revealed to you to step out and be a blessing and love people, so do that. And then trust him with the unknown and let him unfold the mystery. And I think if you do that, this is a great life, man. Great life.
Yeah.
That's really it, man.
Yeah. Well, as I was sitting there last night, I couldn't help but think back to when I was in college, which wasn't that many years ago.
Yeah.
But at this kind of transition point in my life, we've kind of talked about it if you've listened to this series and kind of heard I'm getting married in a couple weeks. And so it's another one of those unknowns that you were just talking about. And I was thinking back to when I was in college, and God kind of blew up my world as I wanted it, as I saw it should be, and taught me a lot. And really what came out of that was just a steadiness to my life, a steadiness to how I make decisions, to how I handle crises. And I'm so thankful for that, coming around and getting to meet Ashley and looking to link my life with her in a couple weeks. I go, this plan is so much better, God, than the one I thought I had in college. And just really, it's a cool thing to look back and with some hindsight, be able to understand all that he did. And you're right, you said it in the talk, that it brings him glory. It's the greater the challenges, the greater the glory. So,
well, and that reminds me of something from the text too. Just you looking back now at the you in college, you can forget that as you move on. You just focus on the next problem. You don't remember, oh yeah, the me in college was like, who am I going to marry? Oh God, will I ever love again? Kind of whatever. And God provides. The Israelites, when they march out, they were, you're told in chapter 12, they're eating the Passover bread. Like he told them, take this bread with you and eat it. So literally while they're walking, they're eating bread, which was a symbol of God's deliverance that just happened. So they're munching on this bread, carrying the gold they got because they plundered the Egyptians, which God said they were going to do. And by plunder, I don't mean steal from them. The Egyptians freely gave them gold and silver, right? And then the text says, and they walked out 430 years later, exactly when God said they would. So here they've got a fulfilled prophecy, absolute provision. They're munching on a reminder of God's liberation. And then when they hit the Red Sea, they should have been able to look down at their gold chains, the bread they're eating, and go, he got us this far. He will get us over this next challenge. Look at all that he's done. I trust him. They had enough faithfulness behind them to believe that, but they lost sight of it. They were just like, were there no graves in Egypt? And just lost their minds. And it's the same with us. It's good now to go, hey, he was faithful to me. He was faithful to me in college, and he'll be faithful to me now. And for you listening, do that. That's what it means to count your blessings. And like, well, I guess I should be grateful because he gave me life. You go, no, you look back and go, hey, I've come this far by his grace. He will lead me home. I trust him. And so that's our hope today, is that you would lean into him and find that he really is worthy of your trust. And so we'll be praying for you to that end, and then keep marching on this Exodus together, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll be back in Reed next week. If you can, join us. If you're too far, we're glad you're here and listening, and we do hope that the talks are helpful. This back part where we kind of talk about the night and talk about some extra things is helpful, and we hope you'll keep listening along with us.
See ya.